I want to thank everybody for being here. This has been an incredibly tough few days for the city of San Francisco. I first want to take a moment to let the employees of the Department of Public Works know that we are on your side. The Department of Public Works is filled with hardworking San Franciscans who genuinely care about our city and take pride in doing their jobs. However, the hard work and good intentions of these public servants has been consistently undermined by executive leadership who treated the department like a one-person fiefdom where anything he said goes. In many cases, city employees have been too afraid to report what's been going on for fear of retribution by Director Nuru himself or other people involved in these schemes. My office has received multiple calls and emails since Monday from former and current Public Works employees sharing their terrible experiences and fear. Even now, many people are afraid to come forward because they believe that the city will fail to protect them, as it so clearly failed to protect them in the past. Director Nuru's corrupt behavior didn't happen in a vacuum. His approach was fostered and protected by city leaders who turned a blind eye. It is imperative that City Hall send a message that we have zero tolerance for blatant corruption. This is especially infuriating to me as someone who represents a district that has long suffered from filthy streets. Residents in my district have to step out and dodge feces, trash, and needles every single day. This is a terrible, unacceptable public health crisis, and no one should live in those conditions. But time and time again, when we asked Director Nuru to take action, to add bathrooms and trash cans and pressure washing, the answer was no. Now we know that at the very time that the conditions on our streets worsened, Director Nuru is accused of spending his time lining his own pockets. This is infuriating. My constituents and residents across the city deserve government officials that are entirely focused on one thing: effective, transparent decision-making and results that solve problems and improve quality of life. They clearly have not received that from the leadership at Public Works. The Director of Public Works serves at the will of the mayor and the city administrator. I'm not going to in any way interfere in the mayor or the city administrator's decision-making power. But it is my First Amendment right to speak out against corruption. And for anyone who is in a situation like this, it seems clear that they should resign. I've been advised by the city attorney that I cannot call directly for someone to be dismissed, but I very much hope that the mayor and the city administrator do the right thing here and hear us loud and clear. After 2 corruption scandals and years of filthy streets, the people of San Francisco no longer have faith in the ability of Mr. Nuru to do his job. That should be obvious. But this can't just end with Mr. Nuru. For a long time now, City Hall has been plagued by a culture of pay-to-play, under-the-table backroom dealings that have undermined our city's values. While I appreciate the talent and hard work of the city controller, the sensitive and potentially broad-spanning nature of this investigation makes a normal controller's audit insufficient. It is both necessary and appropriate to identify a completely independent investigator without any pre-existing contracts or relationships with the city to conduct investigations. That's why this morning we began work with the clerk of the board to put out a request for proposals for an outside special investigator. The special investigator will be tasked to discover the extent of the corruption within the Department of Public Works, Department of Public Health, Trans Bay, the Airport Commission, and any implicated city departments in the executive branch. It is also key that this investigator puts forward recommendations as to how to make sure that this never happens again, that they review our contracting procedures, that they help us ensure that we have effective and sufficient oversight, transparency, and accountability, which clearly is lacking now. The culture of pay-to-play politics at City Hall must end. San Franciscans deserve transparent, accountable, effective government. We have a long way to go to achieve this goal, but I believe that a clear and completely independent investigation is the way forward. If the city of San Francisco is truly committed to holding itself accountable and earning back the public's trust, then this is how we do it. I want to introduce 2 of my colleagues who have been leaders on ethical government and holding City Hall accountable. And one of them is the chair of the Government Audit Committee, who I've been working with closely on this. And the other, first, I want to introduce Supervisor Preston, who's also been very outspoken on holding this body and this building accountable. Supervisor Preston.
Thank you, Supervisor Haney, for convening this press conference. Thank you all for being here. As we all take in the daily shocking news about what is happening at the highest levels of government here in San Francisco. I want to join with Supervisor Haney in emphasizing the need for an independent investigation. We absolutely cannot rely on the executive branch of government in the city and county of San Francisco to investigate itself. That does not work, as shown by the long-standing corruption that is being revealed as the days unfold. I find the brazen corruption that is being that is coming to light to be shocking, to be a betrayal of the public trust. And I want to emphasize, as Supervisor Haney did, because it's really important. At times like this, when we see this type of corruption at the top, it is important that we do not attribute that to all of the folks, the thousands of folks who are working every day in the Department of Public Works and in our other departments to do good work across this city. And that we recognize that there may be bad apples that need to be dealt with, but we cannot attribute their conduct to the folks who are working beneath them and for them. I'm particularly troubled with revelations yesterday that this corruption appears to have extended to a development project in my district, in District 5 at 555 Fulton Street. And we will learn exactly what happened here. We must. I also want to recognize the work of law enforcement to bring this to light, the courage of whistleblowers who are willing to put their livelihood at stake to bring forward misconduct, and to those in the media who have really helped us connect these dots in the last couple days and who play an invaluable role in making sure that the public knows what's going on here in City Hall. I want to reiterate that it is fine that the mayor has called for the city attorney and controller to look into it, to investigate. That is the mayor's right, and it is certainly appropriate for her to call for an investigation. But as the Board of Supervisors, as the legislative branch of government, we cannot simply sit back and allow the executive branch and its members to investigate themselves. And so we will be doing everything that we can to make sure that there is independent investigation and accountability and transparency as these events and the revelations around these events unfold in the upcoming days. So thank you again, Supervisor Haney, for convening this. And I will now turn it over to Supervisor Marr, who has been a leader in government accountability and transparency. Thank you.
And I just want to, and thank you, Supervisor Preston, I want to reiterate, so Supervisor Marr is the chair of our Governmental Audit and Oversight Committee, which I also sit on, and so we've been working together on this. Supervisor Marr.
Thank you so much, Supervisor Haney, for convening this, and Supervisor Preston for also joining us. The people of San Francisco deserve accountability, transparency, and honesty. They deserve justice. And Matt's absolutely right. We need an independent oversight of DPW and a comprehensive audit. Public Works must work for the public, but that isn't enough. We need systemic reform. We need big structural change to root out the corruption that has undermined trust in and effectiveness of city government for a generation. Nationally, we're at the start of a long overdue reckoning with public corruption in this country. It's why the 45th President of the United States is the third to be impeached. It's the root of so much rot in our politics and our policy. It's why common sense laws don't get passed, no matter which party is in power. And why every large profit-driven corporation considers millions of dollars spent on lobbying and campaign contributions a good investment. We are due for this reckoning nationally, and we are due for it locally. We call ourselves a progressive city, and yet we have allowed a culture of casual corruption to go unchecked for decades across this town and across half a dozen administrations. To talk about corruption, we must go beyond criminal complaints. We need to talk about power, who is able to access it, and who they're accountable to. My immediate predecessors were both appointed into power. Being appointed doesn't make you corrupt, but an unbroken line of representatives installed into office doesn't exactly demand public accountability, and we must. The last District 4 supervisor to win his seat in an open election before me in a Democratic election was Ed Jew, who went to prison for extortion. And not long before Ed, we were represented by Leland Yee, who went to prison for bribery and public corruption. This history is not limited to my district. Suffice to say that the pending indictment of Director of Public Works is appalling, and it is unfortunately not shocking. It's not shocking because it isn't a dramatic break from business as usual, so much as the awful embodiment of it. Corruption is not only a violation of the public trust, it is not only criminal, but it also breeds incompetence. It hurts morale and makes government less effective. The vast majority of public servants work hard to serve the public, and when government lacks public accountability, oversight, and transparency, when public officials are looking out for private gain, streets don't get cleaned, potholes don't get filled, projects get delayed, and we all suffer for it. We must recognize this scandal for what it is, a gross violation of the law, ethics, and public trust, and a symptom of a larger disease. This moment is a tremendous opportunity to fully and finally reckon with our culture of corruption, our politics built for the wealthy and well-connected, and an entire generation of public officials failing to adequately address it. We cannot continue to fail. There will be attempts to limit the political damage of this scandal, to return as quickly as possible to the status quo. We cannot and must not. We must dismantle the status quo that allowed this. We do not yet know all that this will require. We do not yet know where this will lead. We do not know those with power but we do know that those with power without accountability will do their damnedest to keep it. We know those who pay for political influence will bully those who can't buy it. But we must start now, and we do not stop until we have ripped out the corruption root and stem. Yes, Supervisor Haney is right. We need to start with a fully independent audit of the Department of Public Works. Not simply a review of impacted contracts by the controller or city attorney, a truly independent, third-party, and impartial audit of the department top to bottom. I also agree that we need to look seriously at restructuring public works. But the corruption highlighted by this case extends far beyond public works. We need systemic reform. We need to look at expanding public oversight across departments, at reforming commission appointments and the budget process to address the consolidation and calcification of power. We're starting a performance audit of the Ethics Commission next week, and we need to look at strengthening enforcement of our existing ethics laws. And we need to do things we haven't thought of yet because we don't know how far this rabbit hole goes. We will find out, and we cannot look away from the hard work needed to reform our city and corruption and earn back public trust. We must rise to this immense challenge and opportunity together. Thank you.
Again, thank you all for coming.